She the queen, yeah, that's Queen Esquire. Legal trouble, she getting you out the fire. Another dame, she solving another case. Cause she litigate with dignity and grace. She the queen, yeah, that's Queen Esquire. Legal trouble, she getting you out the fire. Another dame, she solving another case. Cause she litigate with dignity and grace.
Hello, litigators and opinionators. Court is now in session. Hello, everybody. How are you doing? We got a lot of stuff that is going on in the world, you guys. Oh my God, there's so many stories to cover. I really can't even. Hi, Ellen. Hi, love. I can't even keep up with all the stuff that's going on. I mean, if you guys have heard about the Austin Drummond case, I have not covered that yet because it's everybody's covered that one. But I wanted to focus on two different updates, but I'm going to start with a story right now that I want to cover. Oh, it's so good to see you, Ellen. I missed you, girl. This story that I'm about to talk about today or tonight is disturbing. And it's disturbing for one of the reasons that I'm seeing a pattern going on in our country right now. Kids are out here killing their parents. This is the second case that I've heard this week where a child has murdered their parents. And this story is absolutely disturbing. It's a story that's just now unfolded yesterday. And it's actually quite very sad. So let's get into it. This story is going to have a lot of developments, but here on the screen, let me just introduce the parties to you. The young man here on the left is the 14-year-old son of Brandy here on the right and her husband, David Lee. And they live in Florida. And goodness, when we get into the story, for years, Brandy and David had been dealing with behavioral issues with Trevor here, who's 14 years old. They have two children from what I know of. One is an older daughter and Trevor. And as we're going to delve into this story, Brandy talks about some of the issues that she had to deal with as it relates to Trevor's behavior. And it stemmed back in his childhood, of him having behavioral issues. But what was also interesting about this story and what the mother talked about on her Facebook, which again, we'll get into that part of it, is she says that even though he had behavioral issues, she said he was close to God and they went to church and they had some type of Christian background. So it's kind of interesting that this family kind of went off to the side. It's so sad. Okay, anyways, let's get into what happened. So Monday, this kid, he gets in this big argument with his parents. This is in Florida. I don't know what the argument stemmed from, but as a result of that argument, the parents, they were in bed in the morning hours of Monday, and this 14-year-old son retrieved their firearm, went into the bedrooms while they were asleep, and shot them to death. After he shot them to death, he then left the murder weapon inside the residence. He called his aunt first, who lives in California. He told his aunt what happened. Then his aunt and him, they called 911. Now, when they called 911, the son, Trevor here, after he murdered his parents, he walked to the church. And like I mentioned, he was a child that was raised in the church. He was very centered in God, but which was weird about how this case turned out. And when he was at the church, he called law enforcement. He called 911. He said, "I murdered my parents." And then he proceeded to tell the dispatcher to pray for him. So it's very interesting and very sad because I actually heard of another case that's going on as well, where a child shot up his mother, because he was upset with her. And he shot her about 5 times this week. And luckily she's alive, but she's in critical condition. So we could see that these kids are really going off on the deep end, murdering their parents. These are beautiful parents. And then Trevor, he also called his best friend. After he called his aunt and called law enforcement, they went to pick him up. He told he asked the dispatcher to pray for him. He also called his best friend and he told his best friend that he loved him. His best friend was interviewed by the news outlets, and his best friend was absolutely shocked about what happened. and he could not, fathom his friend murdering his parents. And he said on the news report, he said, I don't want you guys to remember him as this bad kid. Remember him, for the other good things he's done. He's a good kid. So guys, this is a disturbing case. Let's get into it. Oh my gosh. We're going to even hear a little bit of the 911 call. So I got this from someone on Facebook, and they said on here on August 4th, 2025, a shocking tragedy unfolded in Middleburg, Florida, when a 14-year-old Trevor Lee allegedly shot and killed his parents, David Lee, 44 years old, and Brandy Smith-Lee, because they're married, 45, in their home on Silver Point near County Road 2020. The Clay County Sheriff's Office reports that the incident followed a domestic argument late Sunday night. Trevor called 911 after midnight from a nearby church. So, wow, let's kind of go back in the timeline. So it looks like this argument started on Sunday evening. And around 12 a.m., when all the parties started to go to bed, he murdered his parents in the early morning hours because he called them at midnight. So it looks like he probably murdered them on the 3rd, which is the Sunday, like late at night when they had already retired to bed. They had their argument, went to bed. And then around I would say around 11 p.m. to even midnight hours, that's when he murdered them. And then around midnight, he walked to the church after he called his aunt. That's what it's looking like. So after about midnight from a nearby church, so he had at 12 a.m. in the morning after he murdered his parents, he walked to the nearby church, confessing to the crime, waiting for deputies to apprehend him. Authorities found the couple dead from gunshot wounds with a suspected murder weapon believed to belong to the parents left at the scene. Trevor had been charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder. Investigators are delving into his mental health history and school records as part of the ongoing probe. The sheriff's office assures the public that this is an isolated incident with no further threat to community. Stay tuned for updates. Now, what's interesting is this child, he appeared to have good behavior at school. He's a straight A student, ironically. And it's very shocking that he just did that. One thing I find that's a red flag in this: parents, you must lock up your firearms. Children do not have the cognitive ability to regulate their emotions at this age. Children this age do not process their emotions really well. And they could be very impulsive, and they don't think about future consequences of their decisions because they're still developing mentally. And so if you have firearms in your house, you have a legal duty to make sure that firearm is locked up and away from child's ability to reach the firearms. So as sad as it is, as sad as these victims are, the victims, the one thing that they failed to do in this case is lock up their firearms in a locked place where no child could get a hold of it. And that I saw as the biggest issue in this tragedy is this child, of course, knew that they had this gun, and then they didn't put it up in a secure place. And this child obviously had been dealing with long-term behavioral issues based upon, even when this child was a young child, which we're going to go to her Facebook. Let's look at some of this other stuff they have on Facebook. So here it is. Brandy Smith-Lee and David Lee were both murdered this morning. Here's a photo here. Now look at the Facebook post that she did here. And I'm going to show you this on her Facebook, but this is disturbing. Look at, this is one of the posts on the mother's Facebook page. She wrote this March 18th, 2019. And this is when Trevor was smaller back then. He was a little kid back then. And she said, "This little boy gives me pure hell. Everything I did to my parents, I'm getting back 10 times. Y'all keep us lifted up in prayer." Can you believe that? Can you believe this kid? The red flags were there back in 2019. This kid already was exhibiting behavioral issues that the parents were trying to deal with. And it's crazy how this was left unchecked. Now let's just go to their Facebook so I can show you. So this is the mother. She's beautiful. She's 45 years old. Absolutely stunning and amazing woman from what I've seen from her Facebook posts. But let's take a look. She said, She posted here, said, I know y'all miss me. Here's some of her pictures here. You can see the mother. Very beautiful woman. Seems to have herself together. Entrepreneur type woman in Florida. She seemed like a very sweet mom too. She raised her kid very well as we're going to get into. She said, always own who you are unapologetically. This is one of her pictures here. But let's get down to the post I'm trying to get to. Here they had like a birthday party here or something. Oh, my niece is here, beautiful and grown. That's her. Is that her grandma? Childhood. Oh, I think this is her grandmother right here. We're going to get to the post I want to show you because I want to show you the comments too. Okay, look, let's see what she said. This is back in 2019. She said, Facebook fam, I really changed my life 17 years ago to be exact. Those that can keep it real ain't hateful and aren't slick jealous know this. I am nowhere near the way I was when I was a teenager, but it be my own family that try to keep me in that box. Yes, God has changed my life, but don't sit there and down me and say ugly things about me and expect me not to tell the truth about you to your face. It speaks volumes when you have to make up lies on me to make yourself look good. You're almost 50, but yet you're almost 50, but yet I am where you want to be. I get it, sis, but take that up with God. I will continue to thrive because while you're hating on me, I only done things to uplift and help you. So what she's trying to say here is that she was a problem child growing up. She gave her parents a lot of hell. She was very defiant, getting into a lot of trouble. And she made jokes about the fact that her child was exhibiting those same qualities that she exhibited. This is the post that she did in March here that I wanted to bring to your attention here. As you can see, back in March, she posted this saying that the little boy was giving her pure hell. Everything I did to my parents, I'm getting it back 10 times. Y'all keep us lifted. And she was talking about, man, pure hell. I don't think I've ever heard a parent say this about their child. I don't think. And this was when the child was before he was even 14. That's like he wasn't even a teenager at this time. He was already having a lot of behavioral issues. But let's check out the comments, which I wanted to highlight to you, kind of to get a background about this child. So here they're all joking about it. They're like, I feel your pain. Damn, probably still do. They're like making all these jokes up about it. Let's see if I can try to. There's a post and there's a particular comment. Oh my God, cuz I am definitely keep y'all in my prayer. She said, thanks, cuz I need all the prayer I can get. He's a mess. Okay, here. So she said, this grammar is so awful. Hard to read. It says, cuz I am gold, most definitely keep y'all lifted in prayer, but you just turned out blessed and highly favored. It's nothing a little prayer can't help you. This is what the mom said that died. She said, thanks, cousin. I need all the prayers I can get. He is a mess. Always fighting, guys. He had aggressive tendencies 6 years ago. These were the red flags, and the writings on the wall were there warning them, and they weren't able to get a hold of it. And the thing is, even though he had these violent tendencies, they still made it available for him to have a gun. Like, I'm not blaming the victims. I'm just being real that we have to be careful when it comes to having firearms around. And then this person says, you were bad. They were like saying how bad she was as a kid. And then let's see what she said here. She says, the mother says, Brandy says, I was terrible. I know your dad has some stories to tell. And then Brandy says, we were both bad. He probably doesn't even remember. Then Brandy, which is the mother of Trevor, says, I sure hope he doesn't remember. You were bad when? Girl, stop. You must have been undercover because I saw you as one of the good girls. Then her cousin says, not with what we got caught doing when Curtis came to your house. And then she starts laughing. This person says, I'm laughing too hard to pray on this one. And then she says, I'm dead serious. Like, so like some people say, like when people are joking, they think it's funny, but usually when people joke, they really mean what they're saying and they just claim it's a joke when they really mean it. So let me see. There was one, look at this. She said, I'm just really realizing that, oh, bad self. She said, the caption, then his facial expressions, classic. She said, I'm just realizing that, oh, bad self. Like, I have never heard a parent online talking about how bad their kids are. Like, that to me speaks volumes. And she seemed to be already stressed out 6 years ago. And the kid was just giving her stress. This person said here, this is what I wanted to show you guys. So this person said, God bless will be with you both. Ask him the questions, what would God do in your shoes? Brandy says, he doesn't play about God and Santa Claus. Sorry, he doesn't play about God and Santa Claus. He's very spiritual at his young age. I'm very proud of that. Now look at the irony to this. This child was very religious because his parents brought him up in church, even though he had severe anger and impulsive issues, which is typical of children. Children are still learning how to regulate those emotions. So combine that with a firearm, that's a very tragic situation, because when kids get angry or impulsive, they make a decision and they think later because they don't have the capability at 14 or even younger to process the consequences of their behavior and not to realize that, oh, if I make this choice of shooting them, I can't come back from this consequence. There's going to be other consequences that are fatal that can happen to me. They don't think about all those things, right? So that's why it's imperative that as parents, if we have firearms in the house, we make sure they're away from the children. I mean, there shouldn't be any ammunition near those guns. The gun should not be loaded. The gun should be locked in a safe somewhere. And the keys are not, or even with the combination code somewhere where the child is not able to obtain it. And a lot of times now parents are having these firearms and we're seeing toddlers and other kids, teenagers, different, young children getting a hold of firearms, accidentally killing parents, accidentally killing themselves, accidentally killing friends, or even themselves. So that, I think, is one of the biggest issues I've seen in this. But look at the irony of this comment here. This was 6 years ago, how she says he doesn't play about God, right? And how she says she's very proud of that, right? The interesting thing is, after he murdered his parents, he goes to the church. And that is his safe place, where he goes to the church and then calls law enforcement. So that was ironic to read that she wrote this 6 years ago, that he knows right from wrong. He knows that, he knows about God, and that's his safe place, even after he committed this murder. So it's pretty ironic that she said that, like she's speaking from the grave. So that is so sad, you guys. This was her Facebook. There's like a lot on her Facebook. She even talks about her daughter. She has an older daughter that she celebrated her birthday. Here are some photos. This is her older daughter here. Her daughter's pretty. Look at her daughter. I think her daughter actually is in the military, and I'm not sure. This is her older daughter here. They look kind of alike too, but she looks more like her dad. Again, the older daughter. I think the daughter was in the military, and the reason why I think that, because there was two different 911 calls that were made. One 911 call was made from the aunt that lives in California. Then there was another call from someone else saying that they were in the military. This might be another one of her children. Now, this person, I can't take him anywhere. I'm not quite sure if this is her husband. Or if this is her other kid. I think this is her husband here. He looks younger back then. This was 2017, 7 years ago. So that might be her husband there. Let's see if we can find any more pictures. So here is a picture of Trevor when he was younger. Right here. My mouse is circled right here. Back in 2017. And he was already a little menace to society, fighting, getting in trouble. I mean, he was a handful trying to keep track of this kid. So imagine when they turn 14, when they become teenagers, their behavior can amplify. And what was going on in this family, he had everything he wanted as a child. That's one of the issues that we have to worry about in this latest generation. What's going on in the latest generation, the Generation X, the current generation, is a lot of these parents are spoiling their children and they're not giving them much discipline. I'm not saying this woman wasn't disciplining her kid, because she was, but at the same time, a lot of these parents are spoiling these kids and giving them everything they want and not really giving them consequences. This is Trevor right here. This is Trevor back in 2017. So not giving these kids consequences for their behavior. So when the kids start to grow up, they begin to rebel. Once the child becomes a teenager, it almost becomes nearly impossible to control them. That's why it's very imperative that during their younger years, prior to when they're teenagers, you instill in them certain behavioral requirements. So I know parents nowadays, they want to give their children everything they want in the world, because when they were growing up, the prior generation was, disciplined harshly. They had a lot of rules growing up, stern child rearing. So when they grew up, a lot of the parents now are spoiling their kids rotten and giving them, benefits that they didn't have growing up, like maybe all the toys they wanted, or all the, games or whatever they want. They're spoiling their kids because they're trying to make up for the things that they didn't have growing up. But what ends up happening is when these children are not being disciplined, then when they become teenagers, it becomes merely impossible to control these kids. Impossible. This is the husband right here too. Look at the dad with little Trevor back in 2015. He was a cute little boy. That's the father. So sad. So now when they become older children, then it's hard and it becomes nearly impossible. This is the mother with the other kids. I think they have 2 kids though, from what I understand. And now when they're older and they're teenagers and they start rebelling, we're seeing a lot of kids murdering their parents. And I'm telling you, I have just read a case yesterday with another 15-year-old who shot his mother 5 times because he was upset with her. Then a few weeks ago, I heard about another kid who killed his mother. And then the older son returned home after the younger kid killed his mother. And then the older son killed the brother who killed his mother. So there is a lot of interfamilial murders going on. There was another case that I read recently where a younger brother killed his sister. So I don't know what's going on, guys, but there is a lot of disturbing cases going on with family members killing each other and children killing their parents. It is absolutely devastating. And I'm curious to hear from you guys. This is her on Better Days, the mother who passed away, and the father, David Lee, with the children, and, other siblings going on. So that was Trevor on Better Days right here where my mouse is. So guys, I don't know what's going on. I want to hear what you guys think about what can we do I don't even know if we can fix this, but it's nearly impossible to what's going on now. So let's get into some of the YouTube news outlets that are going on. They recorded the 911 call. And also they've talked to the friend, which is saying that he's this good kid. Of course, you never can predict these behaviors too. Sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't. So let's see what the news outlets have to say. I have a couple of video clips to share with you guys while you guys let me know what you guys think about this tragedy.
We're seeing the face of the teen who stands accused of killing his parents. 14-year-old Trevor Lee facing 2 counts of second-degree murder. And for the first time tonight, we're hearing his voice in the newly released 911 dispatch recording. I want to warn you, hearing the call may be disturbing.
Can you pray?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, I'll listen to you. Well, I was going to ask if you could pray for me, ma'am. Right now? I'll definitely be praying for you, son.
Investigators say Lee was outside a church when he dialed 911 and reported himself. He stayed on the phone until deputies got to his location and took him into custody.
News4Jax reporter Eric Albanese here in studio with us with more on this new information he obtained in this case. Eric?
Yeah, we were able to acquire a lot more information than what we had yesterday when we first reported this story. Now, we now know where in the house the parents were killed and the extent of their fatal injuries. We also found out that the 14-year-old called his aunt in California before he called 911 to turn himself in. Just one day after 44-year-old David Lee and 45-year-old Brandy Smith were found shot to death inside their Silver Oak subdivision home in Middleburg, News4Jax has learned the couple was in their bed when they were shot multiple times. Both were pronounced deceased when paramedics arrived. Investigators identified the killer as the couple's son, 14-year-old Trevor Lee. After the parents were murdered, Lee called his aunt in California. She then called Clay County 911 dispatch. What her nephew told her was redacted from the 911 recording.
They're in the house. Please. Can help immediately. Ambulance, whatever, immediately.
The teen traveled to a nearby church parking lot and called 911. He stayed on the line until deputies arrived to take him into custody.
I'm by the road. I threw my backpack away from me. I'm stripped. I'm waiting for the police. What do you mean you're stripped? I have nothing in my pocket. I emptied my pockets and everything. There's nothing in my pockets.
While most of his conversation with the dispatcher was redacted, we hear him ask the dispatcher to pray for him.
You first?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, I'll listen to you. Well, I was going to ask if you could pray for me, ma'am. Right now. I'll definitely be praying for you, son.
These parents are dead in their bed. And
Retired JSO Director of Investigations turned News4Jax crime and safety analyst Tom Hackney says this was no doubt a heinous crime carried out by a kid, but he also says the fact that the teen called 911 to surrender himself says something.
instant remorse. When you hear the sound of his voice and you hear kind of what he's going through, aside from the redacted part, you hear some instant remorse. And I think that's kind of bolstered by the fact that he left the scene and goes immediately to call 911 and turn himself in.
Now, the 14-year-old remains in custody at the Regional Juvenile Detention Center in Jacksonville. So far, he has not been charged as an adult.
I finally got my claim for my car accident.
And that news report was pretty telling. It tells me that, one, Trevor had immediate remorse for what he did, because he went to the church, because that's kind of like the place where you go as your sanctuary to seek shelter, to, repent for anything you've sinned for. It's supposed to be an environment where you can receive forgiveness and not be judged for a behavior that you did. So the fact that he went to the church, it shows his child rearing, that he was raised in a very religious household. His mother and father did what they could to try to raise this child in, religious principles and good moral principles. But unfortunately, in this generation, it's just becoming more and more impossible in terms of how to raise these children. It's getting out of control, as you can see. And it's just very devastating. And now there's a couple of other footages that I would like to show you. But before we go to those, let's just take a look at what people are saying that knew him. So the first statement I'd like to tell you is about the best friend. So this young man here, not him, this is Trevor, but this young man here is the best friend of Trevor. He was interviewed by the news reporters, and he became very acquainted with the family and the parents because they would welcome him in, be kind to him, and, Hello. Sorry, guys. Something happened. I think I pressed the wrong button. I'm back. Let me know if you can hear me. Please, say something in the chat. Okay, sorry, guys. If you can hear me, just say something, say I can hear you or not. Sorry about that, guys. I pressed the wrong button, but we're back. Okay, so back to what I was saying. So this is the close friend, and what he was saying here in his statement here is that he said, let's see here. He said, so his name is Kyrie Beamon, and he was Trevor's close friend. He fought through tears during the interview, and he said, "They loved me like a son. They took me in like I was family. And Trevor, he was a good son, always respectful. We all used to hang out together. Just last week, his dad was giving me rides to football practice. He texted me that night and told me he loved me. Wow. He didn't know that would be he said, I didn't know that would be the last message before everything changed. Wow. And this text was from Trevor. So Trevor texted him last night, which was the Sunday night before, or probably after he killed his parents. Wow. So despite the horrific crime, Kyrie says he still loves Trevor as a friend, hoping the truth is more complicated than it seems. He said, I'm not going to stop being his friend. That wasn't the Trevor I knew. Can you believe another fellow 14-year-old kid who's been friends with Trevor all this time for many years growing up, and just in utter shock that your friend murders the parents that you knew? And it apparently, the parents were very sweet, very welcoming to Kyrie, and even treated Kyrie like he was their own child. So that is the other sad part about this, is that this young child here is absolutely shocked that his friend murdered it's crazy, murdered his parents. And it came out of left field because this child can't even believe what his friends did. So that is the statement from the friend, which again shows that these parents weren't bad parents. They were just trying to teach their kids right from wrong, hold them accountable for the misbehavior that they, do. And a lot of children this day and age are just not listening to their parents. They're just not. They're rebelling. And like I said, I believe it's because of the style of raising children nowadays. A lot of parents are spoiling their children rotten. Okay. So this is the young boy. Let's listen to his interview live now.
In Clay County, a 14-year-old boy is in custody, accused of killing his own parents at their Middleburg home, then walking to a church to call 911. Tonight, someone who called that family his own is speaking with News4JAX about this tragic loss.
They were probably the best or one of the best families I knew. They were funny and they treated me very well. They told me all the time that they loved me like a son, and they treated me as such.
The Clay County Sheriff's Office says David Lee and Brandy Smith were shot and killed. A family member sharing this photo of the couple with us.
Their 14-year-old son, Trevor Lee, is charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder. The shooting happened at a home in the area of Silver Point and County Road 220 in Middleburg. News4JAX reporter Alicia Hatcher is there gathering details and speaking with one of Trevor Lee's close friends.
Kyrie Beeman says he was at this house nearly every week and considered the Lee family as his own. He says he and Trevor played football together, and just this past Friday, Trevor and his dad, David Lee, gave him a ride to and from practice. And now Kyrie is still trying to separate the friend he grew up with from the crime he's accused of.
I just didn't think it was real.
Kyrie Beeman, now standing outside of a home he once considered a second home, still trying to process the unthinkable. The Clay County Sheriff says a 14-year-old boy called 911 saying he had just killed his parents, then walked to a nearby church to wait for deputies. That teen was Trevor Lee, Kyrie Beeman's best friend.
He was funny, charismatic. He always brought good energy, good vibes, and he was probably one of the best people I knew.
Kyrie says he and Trevor had been friends since elementary school, and they spoke on the phone just after midnight.
He told me that he loved me, and he told me that he was just calling to tell me goodnight.
Now Kyrie is asking the community not to judge his friend by this one moment alone. Kyrie tells me he's going to continue to push forward for Mr. Lee, Brandy, and even Trevor. For now reporting, Alicia Hatcher, Channel 4, The
Wow. So let's reflect a little bit before we go on for what the friend Kyrie said. And I also like hear what Ellen said. Starting first with what Kyrie said. A lot of times, what was shocking about this is that this young kid, Kyrie, is showing that the parents of Trevor were good parents. They seem to be Christian based, raising their child the best they can, and they opened their home and even car and love to Trevor's friend. And just a few weeks ago at football practice, offered Kyrie a ride home, treated him like he was one of their own, which to me shows the good nature of the parents. So I don't see this as a situation where the child was being abused and he had some legitimate reason to unalive them, which I would say that kind of came out wrong. I don't think there's any reason to unalive a parent. Let's be real. Let me be clear about that. There's no legitimate reason to unalive your parent. But in this case, this child cannot go to court and try to raise a defense that, oh, my parents were abusing me. Because these parents, based on a statement from even Trevor's friend here, they were good parents. They raised their child well. This child literally had all he wanted. He was in sports. He was being spoiled. And I think that's the biggest issue we're dealing with in today's generation. These parents are spoiling their kids. They're not teaching them right from wrong. They're giving these kids everything they want at a young age. And because again, they're trying to make up for something they lacked as a child. Even the mother here explained that she had behavioral issues when she was growing up. And I believe that probably could stem from her child rearing. So when she grew up, this is just my theory, she probably wanted to give her children everything that she was lacking, which I'm seeing this is a pattern that's going on with a lot of these children that are ending up being aggressive. These kids are not disciplined when they're growing up. Now, this mother did try to discipline her child. Even the father did. And as you can see, 6 years back, she was talking about how her child was always fighting, always difficult, was giving her pure hell. So it seems as though, yeah, they were trying to discipline the child, but I still feel like this child was still being spoiled regardless. I feel like this child got everything he wanted. He was not given really strong boundaries growing up. And then the other issue that I seen in this particular one, a tragedy, is that they did not put up their firearm. They left their firearm to be easily accessible to a child, which is absolutely dangerous and should not be done in a lot of these families. And these families, I don't know what is going on with families, but a lot of these families are just leaving their guns on counters, loaded. There's so many kids getting a hold of guns, either shooting somebody, shooting the family, shooting themselves. I don't know. Parents are being very irresponsible with their firearms. And especially if you got a child that you know for 6 years now has been dealing with behavioral impulsive issues, who's always fighting, and now you keep your gun available and easily accessible to a child who's impulsive. It's like you're asking for a tragedy to occur, whether he unalive himself or unalive the parents. And that is what inevitably happened here. And the parents, as sad as it is that they died, may they rest in peace, they have a part to play in this tragedy. But I don't think this is a case where this child was being abused. I think this child, they were trying to rear this child, and they were trying to hold him accountable for some behavioral issues that he had. And because even though they were trying to rear this child in the way that he should be reared, they have been having trouble with controlling him as a teenager, because I felt like they really didn't set firm enough boundaries growing up when he was younger. And so that backfired on him when he became a teenager, because now you got the combination of a firearm in the house with trying to set boundaries with a child who has a history of being impulsive, of being violent, of constantly fighting according to the parents, and rebelling. So now when a parent is trying to tell a child, hey, this is the behavior we don't like, and now we're going to take away certain things that you like, now the child becomes angry, and now the child starts to be impulsive and react in a way to release that anger. Now, when the child knows there's an available firearm in the house, now that's when it becomes a tragedy. So I feel like both parties have a part to play. And I really like what Ellen has to say here. Ellen says that parents may be spoiling and government keeps cutting funds for them and not protecting them some backwards times. Exactly. I feel like, number one, we have some issues with the child rearing. Children are not really given enough boundaries nowadays. Children are just spoiled rotten, and now they become adults. they're not having impulsive abilities to control that. Then they get mad at their parents because they don't want certain rules set, and they are not able to process their emotions well. And then the combination of the government as well, allowing for these firearms. There's not enough accountability. There's all this easy access to firearms. And then we have parents who are irresponsible, keeping firearms in the house and not teaching children about firearms. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. But I don't think this is a situation where the child's being abused, because we have even a child who's best friends with Trevor, who is saying that these parents are kind to them, one of the best parents he's known. So I don't think that's the situation. I think we're dealing with a child who's had a history of behavioral issues, who was not willing to accept the boundaries that his parents placed upon him. And he was impulsive. And that's when that triggered him to commit this crime. Now, let's hear from another individual, because again, we want to get a background story, hear what other people are saying. Now, this individual here is a friend. Let's see who he is. He is a man. He remembers his friend who was killed by the 14-year-old. So this man is a friend of David Lee, the father of Trevor, and he was interviewed. And it says here on Monday, 14-year-old Trevor was arrested and charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder after deputies said he shot and killed his parents. Before we get into this friend here's statement about the parents, what's interesting is, why did Florida charge him with second-degree murder? That is the question I have here. Now, second-degree murder is the easier murder charge to file, because the prosecutor doesn't have to prove specific intent. So that could be the reason why they went with the easier charge. But in my humble opinion, I feel like they have grounds to go for a first degree because of not only his combination of his statements, but the gravity of the murder and the amounts of times these individuals were shot. It shows an impulse to unalive them and a decision and a intent there. But I found it very interesting that the prosecutor in Florida went with second degree for both charges. I don't know why they did that, but I guess they're trying to take the easy road out. Anyways, let's get with this statement here. So First Coast News has learned that the father was unalive. His name was David Lee. He served in the U.S. Navy, and he was active in local sports community. Wow. So this family was a military family, because I think even the daughter, she's also in the military, and there's other family members that are in the military, and the father is in the military. So, individuals that are in the military have structure in how they raise their kids. So it's kind of interesting. I feel like the father did probably instill that kind of structure in this child, but there's also the issue of the spoiling that comes along as well, even though there's that child rearing that they're trying to steer their child in the right way. Now here it says, Andrew Jeter met David Lee more than a decade while they were both stationed in Hawaii in the Navy. He described him as an amazing hard worker, always dedicated, very respectful. Their friendship grew when they reconnected while living on the same street. Let's see if this woman here is going to go into the interview part of it. I don't know if she is. Let's see.
Community. Our Christina Burgess joins us live. And Christina, you spoke with his longtime friend today.
Yeah, Heather, Andrew Jeter says that not only was David Lee a friend to him, but he was also a mentor to him. Now, Jeter is wanting his friend to
Wow, guys, they abruptly removed the video. What was that? They said Microsoft Edge removed this ad as it was too many resources on your computer. That sucks. They just removed the video. Well, okay. That was interesting, guys. So let's see if I can find it somewhere else. If not, I'm just going to read the article of the same statement. They have the statement here. I just wanted to see if maybe you guys could hear it from him himself. It's better that way to hear it from him. But I don't know why they did that. Did you guys see that? They just removed the video. Wow. Okay. Anyways, let me see if I can find it real quick. And if I can't, then I will just, what's this guy's name? That's crazy. Why they just remove the video? Wow, guys, crazy times. Let me see if I can maybe get lucky and find it somewhere. If not, I'll just read the article, guys. It's no big deal. But I like to show the video because it just adds more context to it. Middle man remembers his friend. Okay, let's see. Maybe I can find it. I found it, guys.
And first at 11, 911 calls released today in the double murder of a Clay County couple.
I'll listen to you. Well, I was going to ask if you could pray for me, ma'am. Right now, I'll definitely be praying for you, son.
A dedicated father.
Amazing, hard worker.
A friend to him, but yeah, Heather, Andrew Jeter says that not only was David Lee a friend to him, but he was also a mentor to him. Now, Jeter is wanting his friend to be remembered not only as a proud serviceman, but also a dedicated father.
Amazing, hard worker. Always dedicated, very respectful.
Andrew Jeter met David Lee more than a decade ago when they were both stationed in Hawaii. Their friendship grew as they became reconnected, living on the same street in Middleburg.
It was a surprise to see him here.
Jeter says Lee was an amazing father who coached his son's football team and served as a Navy aviation electrician with pride.
He helped his son in sports. I know he helped multiple other children that weren't maybe as privileged. He giving them rides, helping them out on the team.
When he saw flashing lights outside Lee's home Monday, he knew something was wrong. According to police, David Lee and his wife, Brandy Smith, were shot and killed by their 14-year-old son, Trevor Lee.
It was just an utter disbelief that it happened to him.
Trevor Lee is now charged with 2 counts of second-degree murder. Former federal prosecutor Curtis Fallgetter says a decision will soon be made on whether he'll be charged as an adult.
When you're in the age of 14 and 15, and he's in that bracket, there's a criteria of about 16 different factors the state attorney's office looks at. They vet it within the state attorney's office. Of course, the most important criteria is what's in the public interest. And I think the public interest is that children should not murder their parents.
As the legal process begins, Jeter says the loss of his friend is sinking in for him and many others who knew David.
I'm sure it's a shock to everyone in the military as well that served with him. He had a long career and impacted a lot of people. So I'm sure they're in complete and utter shock as well.
And now Trevor Lee remains in custody here in the Duval County Juvenile Detention Center. His next court appearance is August 13th in Clay County. Reporting live in downtown Jacksonville, Christina.
Well, so there you have it. This child, like the military friend is saying, he had everything he wanted. He was taking him to sports, giving him what he wanted. And like Ellen is saying here, that she's noticing a pattern too, that a lot of times these kids are not being abused. They're just not willing to adhere to certain consequences and boundaries. They want things their way. A lot of these kids are spoiled and entitled. There was another kid a few years ago who unalived his 2 parents. His father was known as an NFL football player. He unalived his parents because they took away his car. So like, that's the problem that's going on in this current generation, is these children are being spoiled rotten. Even though there is some form of child rearing, I feel like it's not to the level it needs to be. And so when they become older, it becomes more difficult to control them. And when they don't get what they want, then they react in violence because of they're unable to control the impulses that they have. And then when you combine that with firearms that are readily accessible to the children, this is where the parents went wrong, then that child is not able to process the severe consequences of using that firearm and not realizing that when they use that firearm on their parents, that's a permanent consequence that they're going to face. And now it's going to lead to decades behind prison. And this poor child, I don't think he registered that. He probably didn't even register what it would like to be in prison. Again, he was sheltered, brought to church. Like the military friend is saying, this kid got all he wanted. He was in sports, taking him everywhere he wanted. Again, that's that spoiled issue that we're dealing with a lot of these children. And so then when the parent starts to get tired of the child's behavior, then they start to instill these stricter boundaries that they did not instill when the child was younger. And now when the parent's trying to instill these boundaries and taking away certain things that this children has been spoiled with, then the child becomes angry and violent, and then wants to unalive. So that's tragically what happened here. It's like Ellen's saying, this is not a situation where the child is out here being abused. And Alicia, she brought up a good point. Hi, Alicia. How are you doing, love? She said, what set him off looks like a nice kid. The kid, there's contradicting statements here. There is the parents dating back 6 years ago. Mom is saying 6 years ago, when the child was not even a teenager, he was pure hell. He was always fighting. Even though she kept him in the church, they were trying to rear him 6 years ago. The kid was just out of control. And at the same time, they were also spoiling the kid because they may have been giving the kid things that they didn't have growing up. So they wanted to make up for what they didn't have. And that backfired on them because when the child became a teenager, now the child wants to do what they want. And when the parents start getting tired of that kid's behavior, now they're giving stricter boundaries. Now the child's like, oh, no, you didn't. And then they don't think rationally, right? They don't know how to process, their choices. So what ticked this kid off is that basically the parents instilled boundaries in him back on just this Sunday. The child didn't like the boundaries. So it became this domestic argument with the child about his behavior. And they might have taken away something that he wanted, which we'll find out later on because more information is going to come out about this story. I'm going to keep track of it and hopefully we get some more details because they already have a statement about what the child did. But they're going to now question the child if he allows them to question him. And he's going to basically divulge what this argument was about. And I guarantee you, once we get more follow-up on this, guys, I guarantee you what's going to come out in this story is they instilled a strict consequence on him. They probably took away something from the child that the child wanted because he was misbehaving. And now when they're instilling this stricter boundary, the child was not about to have it. Okay. The child started to meditate in his bed, angry about what his parents did. And then he made a fatal choice to find the firearm and then unalive him, which is why I think this is more of a first-degree murder because the child knew that this gun was in the house. It belonged to the parents, so they were aware of it. The child thought of getting the gun, finding wherever it was. He knew where it was. He took that gun while the parents were asleep and he shot them, which in my opinion shows just enough facts to get to a first-degree murder because of the fact that he made the decision to find the gun, use that gun to shoot his parents multiple times, then leave, go to the church, make a statement to the dispatcher that he killed his parents. That to me is enough to get to first degree, which is why I'm wondering why the prosecutor took the easy route to go with second degree. It makes no sense. A lot of times prosecutors do that because they're scared of trying to prove the more difficult charge, which in this case is the intent, the first degree specific intent crime where they have to show intent. But when it comes to murder, they don't need to show some well thought out plan to kill. All it takes is a few seconds of just contemplating the idea of killing someone to prove it. So I don't know why the prosecutors are scared to go for the first degree, which is weird. Also, as you heard in that last news report, the prosecutor saying they're considering factors as to whether they're going to charge this 14-year-old as an adult. Right now, he's in a juvenile system. He's probably never been there in his life. He was a Christian kid, raised in church, sheltered, spoiled rotten, like the military friend said. The kid got everything he wanted, basically. Dad was giving him everything he wanted, even, again, because he just wants to give his kids the right child, rearing, but not realizing that this is backfiring on a lot of parents these days. A lot of these parents are just not giving their kids enough boundaries, and it's getting bad. So let's take a look at what this the psychological component of this is. Individuals in the criminal system are saying that maybe he might be dealing with some type of mental health issue. I don't think it's mental health, guys. I think it just has to do with lack of impulse control, which most children suffer with. But let's listen to what they have to say about that.
Boy is in custody after Clay County deputies say he had killed his parents. This map shows the location of this incident. It happened earlier today near Silver Point and County Road 220. The question on everyone's mind is, why did this happen?
There's all these other potential reasons for a child killing a parent, like mental health problems or just a child being completely impulsive in a given moment.
44-year-old David Lee and 45-year-old Brandy Smith. They were found shot to death inside their home in Middleburg. Investigators say their son, 14-year-old Trevor Lee, walked to a nearby church, called 911, and then waited for deputies to arrest him. That teen was taken to the Regional Juvenile Detention Center in Jacksonville, where he remains tonight. News4JAX reporter Eric Avanier joining us live outside the detention center. And Eric, I know you spoke with a forensic psychologist about what could be behind this kind of killing.
Yes, I certainly did earlier today. And I just want to point out to our viewers, this type of crime is called a parricide, or in this case, parricides, because we're talking about two victims. And it's defined as a child killing a parent. Now, while Trevor Lee is locked up here at the Juvenile Detention Center on 2 counts of murder, he will undergo a series of mental health evaluations to help investigators find out why he did this and why he killed his parents. A tragedy that none of the neighbors in this Silver Oak subdivision saw coming.
For it to get to that point where he feel like that was the only option he had is the saddest thing that you could possibly think of.
Seth Myers is referring to the death of his neighbors, identified as 44-year-old David Lee and 45-year-old Brandy Smith. Both were found shot to death inside their home. Clay County investigators say the killer was their 14-year-old son, Trevor Lee. Detectives believe the teen gained access to his parents' gun to commit parricide, a term used to describe a child killing his or her parents.
First of all, it's very unusual.
I consulted with forensic child psychologist Justin Dorenzo to help understand the psychology behind parricide. He says there are several reasons why children kill their parents.
So kids that are experiencing depression or significant anxiety or some other mental health problem, or kids that are maybe addicted to drugs, or even that have a neurocognitive or developmental disorder, have a greater likelihood of doing something like this. But of course, it's very rare.
In fact, it's so rare that according to the Parricide Prevention Institute, only 2% of all U.S. murders since 2010 were identified as parricide cases. And while it's easy to assume kids kill their parents in retaliation for abuse, the data shows that in 65% of the cases, the kids who killed their parents were not abused. The one thing about this case that's so interesting is that he walked to a nearby church, called 911, and waited for the deputies to take him into custody. That's got to be unusual too.
That does sound unusual, and it reminds me, or it tells me that that this was more of an impulsive act. There may have been like a domestic dispute, a big fight, and then he impulsively did this, and then he realized what he did, and he felt very guilty about it.
Can that be considered redeeming?
Yeah, I think it says that there's regret, that he's apologetic. He's probably couldn't believe what he just did.
Right now, the teen has not been charged as an adult. Of course, should that status change, we will let you know both on air and on our website, news4jax.com. Reporting live.
Wow, yes. So that psychologist, he really broke it down, y'all. This kid is not this kid has some behavioral issues that stem back to 6 years ago, if not earlier. And this child has impulsive issues. But you combine that with a firearm in the house that's easily accessible, and boundaries now being placed on a spoiled child for years, it's a disaster. But what the psychologist said was important. This was an impulsive situation. As soon as this kid unalived his parents, after that released all the anger that he had towards his parents. After he did that, he immediately felt regret because he wasn't able to process his choices rationally. So after he did it and all that anger was released, he's like, wait a minute, what did I do? So what did he do? He called his aunt and he went to the place that he is familiar with, where he feels safe, which is church. This child was raised in the church. And I'm going to show you a Facebook photo. This Facebook photo went back in 2017. This is David Lee, the father, and this is little Trevor when he was little. And in this picture, you can see they're all praying. They're in a circle and they're having a prayer, and someone took a picture of them while they were praying. So this child has a foundation of religious upbringing. So you can see he was in a home that was raised upon moral principles, to live a holy, good life with within the boundaries of God. So as this psychologist said, and what they were talking about, the statistics here, these children are dealing with impulsive, incapable abilities to manage their impulses in combination with the child rearing that is not really as strict as it should be, and no boundaries being placed on the child. As the Word of God says, the Word of God talks about not to spare the rod. That's important because a lot of times in this day and age, parents are sparing the rod too much. They just don't, and sparing the rod doesn't mean go abuse your kids. I'm not saying that, but it's like a symbolistic way of saying, don't be light on your discipline, hold your children accountable. That's basically what it's saying. Like, it's not saying go beat your kids to death, but it's just like, don't spare, disciplining your child. And a lot of parents are nowadays, they just aren't doing it. They're just too lenient. But you can see this child had religious upbringing. He was in prayer. That's why when he did what he did, he came back, had a coming to Jesus moment. It's like, you can see here, they're on the circle here back in 2017, they're praying right here. Photos showing this religious upbringing that he was a part of. Even back in 2017, they're having food very close. Like, this kid was spoiled. He had everything he needed growing up. This was his family members and stuff. This kid had everything he needed growing up. This kid had love, support, not even just from the mom and the dad, but from extended family. There's no excuse for, he was born in a neglectful family. You can see here with Trevor. She even put here 2015. She said, "My little mama's boy," right here. You see, she was not a mom that was out here abusing her kid. But again, this kid was a spoiled kid who they finally put their foot down more stern than they had ever done in years. And this child, being a teenager, thought he was grown and allowed his impulses to take control. And that's why you can see the evidence of him going to the church, which shows this sense of redemption and repentativeness to now regret what he did. But the sad part is now he's regretting what he's did. And he's in an unfamiliar place now, in a juvenile cell. And this is the sad part. That's what happened in this case, is now he has to face the reality that he's going to be spending decades in a place that he never thought he would be or even know about, because kids being that innocent, even if he's 14, they're not, familiar with jail and what it's like in a jail. Now, imagine taking this 14-year-old kid and putting him in the adult system. If they choose to treat him as an adult, he goes to the big place, y'all, the jail and the prison. And in that place, a lot of these kids get turned out, you guys. They get turned out and they become career criminals because a lot of crazy things happen. They see so much stuff in that prison. For example, they'll get introduced to street drugs in there. They will get molested in there. They will get abused in there when they have to learn how to defend themselves. And if they're not able to, then they have to join gangs in those prisons. And they start to get raised in a very criminalistic way in these jails. And then they formulate their minds to be more criminal minded. And that's all they know because that's all they had to experience in the prison system. So it's sad the prison begins to raise these children. And again, as I mentioned, when they're 14 years old, their mind's not fully developed. And now they're being raised in a very corrupt place. And they're being reared in a way that teaches them to be a criminal and to have a criminal mind. So in a lot of situations like this, these kids they're not redeemed after this. And the reason why I say this is because the proof of this is in the pudding. There is a current case out right now that I'm still contemplating whether I want to do a case, whether I want to cover this or not, because it's gone viral and those type of cases, everybody's already covered the case. So I'm like, what's the need to even cover it, y'all? But I want to just talk a little bit about it to show you what usually happens, the consequences of these children ending up in the prison system at a young age, because the prison system is not designed to rehabilitate a child that's placed in the system. It's designed to punish. And what ends up happening is as the child is conditioned in these jails to basically become a criminal, in terms of who they're around. They're around, like I said, drug dealers, murderers, all kinds. They become conditioned to have a criminal mind, and they're not able to behave in a humanistic way. Now, let's talk about that. And the reason why I said that, this is a good example of the man that's on the screen right now. His name is Austin Drummond. His situation has gone viral. And I'm still thinking about whether I should cover this or not, because everybody is covering it. And I'm just like, I don't know if I should. So if you guys let me know later on in this that you want me to cover it, then we'll talk about it. If not, I'm probably not going to really talk about it. But anyway, Austin here, when he was about 16 years old, he robbed a store. And he stole $40, okay, from the store. And it was attempted, he didn't kill them or anything. He ended up in juvenile for it, okay? Now, he spent 10 years in the jail system. This kid ended up attempting to murder someone in the jail. And then he ended up joining a gang in the jail. And he started, getting involved in a lot of criminal activity in the jail as a 16-year-old, to the point where this kid, he turned into a basically gang member, drug dealer in the jail, y'all, to the point where he cannot be rehabilitated. So just last year, he was released on bail. They gave him a $36,000 bail. They were supposed to assess one of his criminal charges, which was the attempted murder that he did in jail. And they just put him out on bail while they were before they had their arraignment. Just this year, y'all. So anyways, while he was in that jail, before we get back to that, while he was in the jail, he meets this correction officer and they start having sexual relations in the jail. He gets released last year. This year, don't you know, he turned around, unalived 4 of his girlfriend, now baby mama, because that's his baby mama. She pregnant with his kids, y'all. This is a mess. He kills her sister, her sister's baby's father, the sister's mother and brother. 4 people. And then he has mercy on the little baby that was his girlfriend's niece, and left the little baby in a car seat at some random house, which is how he got caught in the first place. But this kid, well, I'll call him a kid. He's not 29 years old, but he spent his life in a prison from 16 years old all the way up till 27, and now he's 28 or 29 this year, something about that, guys. But his whole life was spent in the jail system. So he was basically being raised in the jail and then a prison system, and formulated this criminal mind as an adult, and he can no longer be rehabilitated. That's just all he knows now. He doesn't have that, empathy like a normal human does. He doesn't process the law-abiding requirements to be in natural society. He doesn't understand that. He only knows the jail system, and that's what he's conditioned to understand. So this is a prime example to you of the future of what will possibly end up happening to poor little Trevor now. A kid that was raised in the church, a kid that, got everything he wanted, but didn't want to abide by the rules and boundaries of his parents because he had been so spoiled. And now that they were taking away some of those benefits, and now trying to hold him accountable and really rear him in the way that they needed to do, because he was rebelling more and more. This child reacted this way, and now he's going to spend his life in a jail cell and now be raised to become a criminal. And all those religious things that he was taught and that spoiled life is going to be the day of the past. And as sad as it is, because the prison system is not designed to rehabilitate, it's designed to punish, this poor kid doesn't seem to have a future going forward. His life is over at this point. It's sad because he's going to now learn survival techniques in prison, which requires criminal activity. So even if he were to get released years down the line, his mind will be so screwed up, excuse my language, that he will not be able to function in society. So that's why I wanted to share this story. The story is absolutely sad, guys. Man, there's so many stories. I can't even keep up of how many teens have been unaliving their parents lately. Just in the last month, there's been so many unalives of these parents going on. But this one just really stood out to me, and I just really wanted to share it with you guys. And like Christina did say, she brought out a good point here. She says biracial kids do get bullied. So I don't know. That is very true. Biracial kids do have another sense of trauma they deal with growing up. Is like she said, they're confused. They don't know who they are. They have the Caucasian, for example, let's just talk about him because there's all kind of biracial kids. But for his instance, he's dealing with the Caucasian side of him plus the African American side of him. He doesn't know who he is. That's like that confusion, that type of associate their identity of who they are. And like Christina said, they could be bullied, dealing with that going to school. He was a little bit more on the chunky side as well, as we've seen from when he was younger. So he might have been bullied for his weight growing up, stuff like that. Let's see what Ellen says. She says, why did they have a gun in the house? I'm reiterating because we haven't learned this yet. Exactly, Ellen, bingo. These parents are not keeping track of their guns. Now, let me explain, okay? So in California, they have very stringent rules in terms of having a firearm in the house, and there are severe consequences for that. But in the more red states, like we have Florida, in this case, this story comes out of Florida. So in Florida, like red states, their laws as it relates to firearms are more lenient. They don't have a lot of the consequences that states like Democrat states like, California, who have stringent gun rules and regulations. So a lot of times in these Florida or red state locations, they don't have a lot of the stringent laws and requirements and prerequisite trainings that citizens should be attending and learning. So because they're not required to go to these prerequisite trainings that show them, hey, you got to have these type of safeguards in your house and so forth and certain requirements, that's why we're seeing a lot of these cases that come out of a lot of the red states. Now, I'm not saying that the blue states don't have shootings, but I'm seeing a lot of the red states have situations where kids are getting a hold of the firearm situation. I'm not saying blue states don't have shooting issues. They do. But I'm just saying as it relates to minor children getting a hold of the guns, I'm seeing them a lot in the red states because there's not the rules and regulations instilled and the consequences instilled in those states that require prerequisite trainings that individuals must attend and take examinations that show they comprehend the trainings that they learned before they can obtain a firearm. Whereas in California, you have to go to certain classes, you have to take an exam, prerequisite exam, before you can even get a firearm in your residence. And if you want to have a concealed carry, then you got to take an additional set of classes. And also you have to visit the sheriff and have an interview with the sheriff. And you have to explain to the sheriff why you want to conceal to carry. And they have to determine whether that explanation that you provide to the sheriff is sufficient. So again, I think that's where some of the issues are with the children getting hold of these firearms, because in California, you have to have your firearms in certain places, in certain, like they tell you have to have it in a locked compartment, or very strict location where the kids are not able to get a hold of it. And they're trained on where could you lock your firearm down, what you're supposed to do with the arm, how to disarm it, stuff like that. They go over all those steps with the individuals who try to obtain these guns. So that's just my analysis. I might be wrong on that, but that's just what I've seen looking at some of the states regarding children getting a hold of these guns. I'm noticing them in a lot of the red states, and I don't know why, but that's just what I think. So anyways, this is a sad story, guys. There's so many stories. I can't even keep up with all of them. Let me see what you guys have to say about this one. Right, like Christina said, it was a close-knit family. So we're not seeing these happening in abused families. This is close-knit families. Could have been, right here, she says, could there have been inappropriate touching? No, y'all know what I mean. Yep, I hear what you're saying, Tavia. That's a good point. Hi, love. Tavia's in the house. Tavia, you know what, girl? In these religious households, let's keep it real. In these religions, they be doing inappropriate touching, girl, these pastors and stuff. So what Tavia brought up, that could be something we need to consider. And we're going to hear from the child. I'm pretty sure they're going to do an interview of this child. And once we get that statement from him, we'll figure out what his whole thought process is. For some reason, though, Tavia, I don't think that might be the issue here. I think this kid was just a spoiled kid who didn't like the rules that were being implemented. That's what I think. That's just my opinion. But you brought up a good point there. you brought up because these religious houses, I don't know, y'all. There be some inappropriate things going on. Okay, so she said you follow Miss Sarah Grace case. That seems like this is the one. Oh, girl, Sarah Grace. I haven't got into that one, but I have heard about that one. That's a crazy one too. Yes, I heard of the yeah, that was crazy. That Sarah Grace case is crazy. Yes, I have heard about that one. That was disturbing. She was the American fashion model, right? Is that the one that shot her mom and stepdad over there? And that's crazy, y'all. Yeah, that 17-year-old. Yeah, I heard about that story too. That story was crazy. The girl killed her parents. Then she tried to act like she was a victim. She read the eulogy and everything. And then she went on TikTok, y'all, over here trying to get all these TikTokers who report on, or social media people who report on crimes, to talk about her story, cover her story. She was crazy, y'all. I have covered that case, but I didn't talk about it yet, Ellen. I don't know if I want to. That's why I need you guys to let me know which cases you want me to cover, because I just think of the ones that interest me. But if you guys want me to cover Sarah Grace, I'll cover that one. Or you want me to talk about Austin Drummond? That's another viral story that's going on. Y'all need to be speaking up. Let me know what y'all want me to talk about, because it's up to y'all. Y'all don't be saying stuff. But yeah, that Sarah Grace case is crazy. Yeah, that's another one. That's another one where the children are online being their parents. So yeah, that's one too, Ellen. But what I was talking to you about was the 15-year-old who shot his mom 5 times. That was a whole different one. So like I said, there's so many of them. I can't even keep up with how many there are, girl. And like she said, I do not understand folks that are all gung-ho. They are, especially in this day and age, girl. And then Tavia says, Trevor is just like a sweet treat, a piece of candy to his cellmate, sadly. Right, Tavia, girl. And this kid, yes, he was impulsive and he made this decision that he regrets now. But like Tavia said, that innocence that he has is going to be sucked dry from him because of, like she said, these corrupt cellmates now that are adults. If he's treated like an adult and they're going to turn this poor kid out, it feels so sad, man. I'm so sad what's going to happen to this poor kid. But anyway, y'all, that is the story I wanted to cover tonight. I'm probably going to come back on a little later just to give y'all an update on the case I was covering too. But please let me know if there is a story that interests you and you want me to talk about it or us to analyze it. Let me know, because y'all don't be speaking up. And so I just be thinking of cases that be interesting me. I'm well aware of all the cases that are going on, but I just pick the ones that I like to talk about. But if you guys want to talk about a specific case, you guys can let me know. You can put in the comments, the chats, and say, hey, I want you to talk about this case that I find to be interesting, and I will cover that one. But I need y'all to speak up, because y'all don't be speaking up, okay? But anyways, have a lovely night, guys. I will be coming back on to cover what is it, Manuel Ruiz, Sin City Manny. There's some updates on that case, so I'm going to talk about that a little later. But for now, y'all, I'm about to close this case out because I don't like to mix all the cases together. Wait, does somebody have something to say? What y'all got to say? Okay, Malcolm J.W. wife is under scrutiny. Oh, yes. I just want to chat with you about all the cases. Right, Ellen, girl? All of the cases. There's so many, Ellen. There's like too many to keep track of. That's why I like if you guys just tell me, just be like, hey, can you cover this case? Because sometimes I pretty much know every case that's out there. Like, just ask me, I probably know about it. But I don't cover everyone. I only cover the one that like ministers to my heart, unless one of my viewers say, hey, can you cover this case? But you guys have not been letting me know what you guys wanted me to cover. So y'all need to speak up and be like, hey, this case, I want you to talk about this case. Okay. All right. I love y'all.